Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another episode of Islam for Europeans. I'm your host, Robert. Please like and subscribe to the channel. So, I wanted to give a couple of announcements. One is that, inshallah, I'm going to have a very big interview. I think the biggest I've ever given, and it's going to be on the Muslim mum. She's got about 85,000 subscribers. Please like and subscribe to her channel. And she's one of the more famous UK like YouTube Dawa channels. I think actually one of the better ones. She's very patient, and she has interviewed people in the dissident right before, and inshallah, she's going to be interviewing me Saturday, April 5th, inshallah, 1 p.m. Eastern time and 5 p.m. her time, UK time. I think yeah. So I think actually, yeah, 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. her time. It'll be on her channel. So please go to that. Please support us at Islam for Europeans. It's going to be an interesting interview because what we're talking about, I'm going to have to very carefully formulate my thesis because, I find that when you're talking to, quote unquote, the normies, the people who don't really know what we're about, or they hear, the idea of a communitarian Dawa approach, or the collectivization of European Muslims, the knee-jerk reaction is to reject this idea, from many mainstream Muslims because it appears as though we're trying to divide the Muslim Ummah. So we have to make the case that that is not what we're trying. That's not what we're advocating for. And inshallah, it might stir some very good debate or discussion. I don't expect everyone to agree with me, but I think I'll be able to make a strong enough case to, inshallah, get people to kind of turn around and see that what we're proposing actually has a lot of value and many, many advantages that we're not really tapping into as a Muslim Ummah. I want to be very careful not to judge or have overly criticize current Dawa efforts by different people who are in the scene, who are calling people to Islam. That's not what we're about. I'm going to be very gentle and not try to overly criticize any one person or any other movement that calls people to Islam. So, there's things they do there that are very good. There are things to do that are better than what I can do. But, I think that if we can tweak how we spread the message of Islam to Westerners and present Islam in a collective way, for the sons and daughters of Europe, I think will have a good effect, inshallah, not just for converts, but for the entire Muslim Ummah at large. So stay tuned for that. Please go on our channel and then, bookmark it. So I'm really looking forward to that interview with Muslim Mom, inshallah. What I wanted to talk about today is this whole concept of the term white Sharia. And this has come into prominence again recently. There's a good brother of mine he's a good Muslim brother. He's from Europe, and he is trying to kind of do a similar thing to what we're doing. But he's attempting more of a kind of kind of like this kind of home for white European Muslims. And his name is Zia. You can his ad on Twitter is Ibn Malika, and may Allah reward him for all the work he's doing. I think he's doing a really good job. I think that we need many people in the kind of whole thing that we're trying to do here. You have me, you have Jan, the Slovak Muslim, you have Levater. There's not many of us, but inshallah, we're going to keep growing. And I encourage the people who are watching my channels, who follow Islam for Europeans, to create their own content as well. And I know we're not going to agree on everything. There's some things that those brothers that I mentioned, they don't agree with me on certain things either. But I want us to keep a good cordial relationship. I want us to be united because it's tough being a European Muslim, and I think that the work they do is overwhelmingly good. And one critique that I have to give, though, is this whole idea of naming a movement such as this white Sharia. And there's several reasons why I think that this is not a good idea, right? Now, branding is super important. You know, you could have the most amazing product in the world, but if you don't have the right branding, if you don't have the right slogan, if you don't have the right narrative, because this is what's going to be put on every billboard, it can fail. You know, just look at the Chevy Nova. The Chevy Nova sold really good in North America. It was an enormous hit. When they tried selling the Chevy Nova in Latin America, it failed, right? Because Nova, Nova means it doesn't go. Right? Draft here. I don't know where that's coming from. It's subhanAllah. So yeah, Nova means it doesn't go in Spanish. So, you know, it doesn't matter how good the product was. You know, if you know who would buy a car and have their friends say, you know, oh, you drive a car, that means it doesn't go, right? So there's basically three or four groups of people who, you know, would cause a lot of trouble if we were to name anything associated with our movement white Sharia, right? Because the first group is, you know, the left, right? The liberal left, especially, you know, groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, uh, you know, the ADL, and you know, you can go on the SPLC's website. They have a whole article. It's like the first thing you bring up when you do a search on white Sharia, and it was actually started by this whole term was started by a neo-Nazi, and his name was Sacco Vandal, and he didn't use the term white Sharia because he liked Islam. He said that, you know, Europeans, white people, need to be as violent as possible towards non-whites, especially in the Muslim world, and we need to repress women. We need to, you know, basically be the white version of what Muslims are doing or what they think Muslims are doing in the Muslim world, right? So very hateful, very stereotypical. Um, so, you know, right off the bat, if you use a term like this, especially in countries like Canada or certain countries in Europe, you could actually get a call from, like, you know, government officials, from CSIS, Department of Homeland Security, just for using a term like this, right? So that's one group. Secondly, you know, the second group would be, I guess, our Muslim brothers and sisters who are not white, who, you know, support Islam for Europeans, you know, but don't, I guess, you know, have some reservations about us being, you know, moderate, you know, not being, and you know, like anti-non-white or racist towards non-whites and so on and so forth. I know that that is not what we mean. If you use a term like white Sharia, I know in their heart that Brother Zia is not like that, and you know, none of my Muslim brothers, I would hope, who follow Islam for Europeans are like that. But you know, the fact of the matter is that we are walking an extreme tightrope trying to have an organization like this, or trying to, you know, get a collectivization of white Muslims, and you know, the support of, you know, Muslims who are not of European background. It's a nice to have. It's not completely necessary, but I think that, you know, I've always held the opinion that you're getting a lot of support from Muslims from all different kinds of backgrounds, and trying to convince their people that, you know, we're a peaceful movement and we want to be part of this ummah, and naming a white Sharia, it's gonna raise a few eyebrows, to say the least, right? So you have that going on, and you know, thirdly, this whole idea of white Sharia is our non-Muslim family members and relatives, right? Because when people hear the word Sharia in and of itself, the white Western world, they don't, you know, when a Muslim hears the word Sharia, you know, they think of, you know, how to pray, you know, praying 5 times a day, and what is the rulings for zakat, you know, for charity, what is the rulings on inheritance laws, what is the ruling on, you know, halal meat, you know, everything related to Islam. You know, it's you know, to them it doesn't mean anything bad, right? Now this, you know, this is the way of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Um, but you know, to your average white Westerner, you know, when they hear the word Sharia, they think of, you know, people chopping off hands, and you know, capital punishments, and terrorism, and you know, locking women up in a cellar, you know, domestic abuse, you know, all these different stereotypes. You know, so I know that we're trying to, you know, we at times we want to sound edgy, especially when we're on, you know, Twitter and Instagram and, you know, Rumble and things like that. And, you know, being an edge lord, at times it appears that it does have benefits. However, you have to keep in mind that we have a lot of white Europeans converting to Islam, and they're facing an enormous amount of trouble and problems and leeriness from their non-Muslim family members, right? If you make this kind of movement and slap the logo white Sharia on it, that's only going to enrage their family members further, right? And you have to understand that these kids, white European brothers and sisters of ours, they're dealing with a lot, and we have this is the kind of like term or slogan that may enrage their family so much that they may get kicked out of the house, they may get written out of the will, real life ramifications for what they're doing. And I know that there's always the anti-Islam side of the right that are just going to hate Islam no matter what. And it's easy to say, we're just going to, enrage them further by naming it white Sharia. And I get where you're coming from, and I get where people are coming from when they say stuff like this. But the fact of the matter is, like I said before, this whole thing is what we're walking on a tightrope, and optics, how we present this as an image is going to be super important. And I don't think white Sharia, is not going to be a good idea vis-a-vis our non-Muslim family and community members. Right. So yeah, and then on top of the fourth group is, I guess, the heavy proponents in Islam of the Medina model, and most Islamic leaders, imams, so on and so forth, are very opposed to anything that seems divisive, right? So when Mexicans converted to Islam en masse, or Latinos, they didn't need to call it Mexican Sharia. When African Americans, when they converted to Islam en masse, they didn't need to call it Black Sharia. So, to call it white Sharia, it sounds divisive. It sounds like, that we're creating a version of Islam only for us. And I know that's not the intent, but a lot of people are going to take it that way. And, rather than try to explain it, that's not what our intent is, it's just better to just discard this term altogether. I mean, and again, you have to think of advantages and disadvantages, right? What are the advantages of calling it white Sharia as opposed to, finding another name for what we're trying to do, right? What are the disadvantages? Write down a list. These are the pros, these are the cons, right? I've seen terms before like white Islam, and there's only one Islam. I mean, we follow the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The revelation of the Quran, given to him by the Creator, confirms all the previous prophets. We all pray to the same Kaaba, to the same pray to the same in the same direction towards the Kaaba in the holy city of Mecca. We all worship only one God with no other partners. We all fast during the same month. So, again, there is only one Islam. Having said that, Islam takes on a different form based on what people, which people are practicing it, right? In Africa, Islam looks African. In Asia, Islam looks Asian. In China, Islam looks Chinese. In Syria, Islam looks Syrian, right? So, I think that that's important. But I think that just naming it white Sharia, there really is no need for it, really. So, in conclusion, I really wish the best for Brother Zia and all the people who are following him. I wish the best for his project. And at the end of the day, we're not going to agree on everything. I'm sure that, the people who are also, trying to get movements like this started, collectivization of white Muslims, they're not going to agree with everything that I'm saying as well. And that's fine. I think that we need to have a flourishing, good relationship as we get stronger, as a Muslim community. But again, my position is, I think that, we need to, again, I can't force people not to use the term. I just think that, think about it, write down all the pros and write down all the cons of using the term white Sharia. Me personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable using it. That's why it's called Islam for Europeans. I didn't name it Islam for whites because, white is such a very loaded term. Portuguese, Spanish, Southern Italians, they have darker skin tones, than many Arabs. So in conclusion, that's my thoughts on white Sharia. Let me know what you think in the chat. I'm your host, Robert at Islam for Europeans. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.